Hello and welcome to Team Franco Bodybuilding Podcast. My name is Joe Franco and this is episode number 43. I've had some requests to discuss this particular topic, but I'm going to put my spin on it as far as my experience as a competitor, as a coach, and a promoter when it comes to steroid use and the ins and outs of what I have experienced. Now, I'm not going to be bashing anyone or telling you what to do because, truth of the matter, I believe in freedom of choice, doing what you want to do, and whatever makes you happy. In fact, I do have a few clients that will use, and I don't ask any questions because I still give them the same guidance as I would for anyone else as far as nutrition and training and possible contest prep. So I just wanted to clear the air and get that out of the way. Now, my experience of steroids all began many, many years ago, meaning when my brother first started competing in the mid 80s. I was a teenager, and there were no drug tested shows, at least in our area. And the shows that he would do basically didn't drug test, but we never thought there would be drug tested shows. And the organization was the AAU. He had some success, and as a teenager, he won his division, so then qualified for the AAU. I'm not even sure, the USA's or whatnot. And it was a national show, which every year was in a different city, and this show would produce eventual pros. We've known a few that go through this channel, and fortunately, it was in Philadelphia. So he is a competitor. I look up to him, thought he was the best, and I would be the guy backstage helping him and all that. And that was the first time that I saw these other guys not thinking about genetics or work ethic, but they blew me away. Like, some of them looked like grown men as far as the muscle size that they had. Now, the conditioning wasn't the same that you may see in natural bodybuilding even now, because this was almost 40 years ago. But the point is, I was like, holy shit, look at the size of these dudes. So my brother does the show. He didn't place, and the top three just look like monsters. And again, I don't like to judge. Maybe they had great genetics, great work ethic, but I think that was my first taste of steroids as far as seeing it in a contest. And unfortunately, he moved on to other things, into powerlifting, but I think that discouraged him a little bit at the time. When I first started competing, the shows that I did, and again, it was by choice, the contests were drug tested for 1 year. So, but I didn't care, we did take a lie detector. I was nervous as all get out. They strap you up, as you know, and all that. And, I was young, and I'm like, holy shit, what's going on? But, they would ask you if you use anabolic steroids, anything in the past year, so on and so forth. But I never really gave it much thought, even worrying about guys that, who can use for a few years, take a year off. I didn't care because I was still focusing me versus me, even at that young age. Now, when it comes to actual steroid use and those who want to compete, like I said, I'm pro-choice. But the soapbox that I get on, as far as when some people do use versus not staying natty and competing, is that I like to see someone, especially at a younger age, or really no matter what age, and maybe they don't have a ton of experience as far as weight training or a ton of experience eating healthy, eating adequately, that after a year, maybe 2 years of training, they get frustrated and they want to jump on a bandwagon and use anabolic steroids. Now, again, you can do what you want, but if your goal is to compete, I like to believe that let's see how far you can go during the natural route. Let's see how much success do you have, how much dedication do you have, and see how well you do competing on the stage without using any steroids. Because even if you were to try that route of going natural, not using any drugs, do everything the best that you can, but just fall short, well, the steroids are not going to make that much of a difference, because when you jump on that level, you're still going to be facing men and women who are training hard, who have great genetics. So therefore, if those things are not in your favor, where you may not train hard, may not have the great genetics, and use steroids, yeah, you can get bigger, yeah, you can get leaner, but the competition is also doing so. And if they have those natural God-gift abilities and work ethic, they are also going to be still ahead of you. So I'm not sure if you see where I'm going with this, because it's not going to make much of a difference. Now, if you have the infatuation of just getting bigger and leaner and not working as hard, and that's a fact. I mean, I've had friends that use steroids, and I've had clients and they admit that they can be not, I hate to use the word lazy, but they have the assistance in helping their muscle grow, and they have the assistance for losing the body fat, so they have that advantage. And they don't have to work as hard. I mean, a top natural pro bodybuilder, yes, has great genetics, yes, has all those things going for them, but they got to work their freaking ass off, and usually it's harder than someone who does use steroids. But to my point, I like to think everyone has the potential to become a pro, so why not use everything at your disposal as far as giving it time, training hard, being patient, and seeing where your body goes before you jump into the steroid game. And I'm not going to talk about, the dangers and everything, because in a weird kind of way, there is hormone replacement therapy from doctors nowadays, and I think it's a money grab. But I understand that as men and women, as they age, hormones change, and it can become a health risk for some. So they do use some just to bring their natural levels up, so on and so forth. That's a whole nother topic. But I like to see someone go as far as they can without using before they do. Now, if you want to jump right in and use, again, pro-choice, do what you want. But the few things that I have seen over the years through coaching clients, and one guy I'm going to talk in particular, sometimes people use steroids because they're insecure. And I've seen this happen a few times, unfortunately, where beginning of my career of coaching, I had a lot of bodybuilders, and this one guy in particular competes in one of my shows. Great upper body, lower body was not there, and he was crushed about his placement. He was placed fair, I thought, but he was so upset. And we continue working together. Then he's like, yeah, Joe, I'm going to try another route. I'm like, okay, wish you all the best. And then in a year, I see him out at a restaurant, and he was a monster. Like, he was a tick. Like, I was like, dude, what the hell? I didn't say that to him. So I did then learn that he started using steroids, and then he started competing, and I would see his pictures pop up and everything, and basically he still looked the same as far as proportions. Legs were still poor, upper body jacked, but just everything was bigger, no symmetry at all. And he competed a few years trying to get it, go through the NPC and all that. And he just, I think he fell off the face of the earth and doesn't compete anymore. But it was sad because I thought he had a ton of potential. He was on the younger side. And I thought that with more time and dedication, prioritizing his lower body, that he would have made, headway. He could have won his pro card eventually in the natural route. But I know for a fact that he took it so hard, and he says, you know what, this is not for me. I want to try another route. But just like I was talking about minutes earlier, the competition is using drugs, so therefore his physique didn't change, only got, amplified, but still the symmetry wasn't there and everything. So again, that's one example where it's you feel bad because you wish as a coach that you could have helped him more. But again, people travel on their own paths, and if it doesn't cross with mine, I can't help them, and it is what it is. So I do see that, and I've seen it with a few other clients over the years where, many years ago, where one woman did really well competing in the figure competition, her first one, where she ended up winning the overall for the novice. And we continued on. We were like, yes, and it was exciting because I knew she had the drive, she had the physique. Again, she wanted to go a different path, and then I see on social media that she's using steroids and all that stuff. So I get it. I mean, let me say, we all have body dysmorphia, natural or not. We do, because we always want to improve. We're not happy. Some people are a little bit worse off than others, and sometimes if it's worse off than others, we do lose greater patience and try to find an avenue to accelerate our results, and steroids is one of them. And I've seen it equally with men and women. And it breaks my heart. It is what it is. But you do what you want to do. Again, it makes you happy, so on and so forth. But to the last point about competing, and, my own personal reflections on this is that people ask me, have I ever used steroids? So I'm like, no. And they say, well, have you ever thought? Absolutely, yes. Back before I started competing in the OCB and the one organization I was competing in, I reached the level where I won the couple overalls, and I'm like, all right, what's next? I'm like, should I try the NPC, and do I have to use steroids? And, I came close to starting a cycle on a couple of things, but then I'm like, you know what? Let me see how much further I can go naturally, and I was in my late 20s, I believe. It was before I met my wife, where I was thinking, is this something that I can make a career out of? Can you really make money bodybuilding? And maybe it was just me realizing, you know what? It is what it is. God gave me these genetics, and I'm still relatively young, so let me see how much further that I can take. But I seriously came really, really close to using, and would have I gone down that rabbit hole and just blasted away with, crazy steroid use? I have no idea, who knows? But I know if I would have been 10, 15, 20 pounds heavier with my physique and my genetics, would I be an IFBB pro? Probably not, but it's just something that comes across, and you have to figure out for yourself if it's really worth it, with all the pluses and minuses. So it was not until like a few years after that, one of my clients, who I'm still friends with today, and he basically introduced me to the OCB, where he had one of the publications, one of his friends competed. It might have been like 2004, the infancy of the OCB. And he's like, yeah, Joe, look at this new organization. And I was like, oh, wow. And then they had, before Facebook, they had a forum that you saw, basically on the internet. And that made me hooked. I'm like, you know what? There's hope for natural bodybuilding. And I'm not sure if their drug test was 5 or 7 years. I mean, now you have to be 7 years clean. Back then, I have no idea. But it was more than one. I know that. So that was like, wow, a whole community of natural bodybuilders. Because I heard of the WNBF and the NGA, but there was no shows in my area. And I was like, I am not traveling. So the first show that I did for the OCB in 2005 was in New Jersey, in Wildwood, where the other organization where I used to compete, and that was basically, it was hooked for me from then. And coincidentally, I took that show over, but ended up moving into Burlington in 2006, and the rest is history with the promoting of that show. So the OCB was instrumental on me knowing that there's a great avenue to compete without using steroids. Now, people, again, in conversation say, oh, those drug tests, the polygraph, it's bullshit. People cheat, everything when it comes to that. And next few minutes, that's what I'm going to talk about, where, yes, I think people can get past it. Yes, people are assholes for trying. But again, as you know me, and you maybe listened to my podcast in the past, again, it's you versus you. You can't control others. And if other people want to be a dick and try to compete in a natural show, even if they're using, so be it. I believe in karma. I probably promoted, I don't know how many shows, to say well over 30. And I would think maybe a dozen people failed the polygraph. And with those dozen people, you know, a few of them were like, oh, wow, I didn't know, or that sort of thing. And I believe them, I mean, it's one of the most awkward things where you're sitting in the hotel room, someone fails the polygraph, then they come and talk to you and ask you what you can do. And it's tough because I'm like, well, I'm sorry. I mean, there's nothing I can do, except for I do give them an option sometimes. Because let me just say that sometimes people will fail, and this happened 3 times. Failed the polygraph, and it was almost like incidental because maybe they were sick or they're severely ill, and they used certain medications to make themselves feel better, and they were honest enough during their polygraph where they admitted to it. So what I will do in those cases, I'm like, listen, you can still go on stage, you can still get the experience, but you're not going to be judged. So you can go out with your lineup, you can be putting through the quarter turns, and you can do your routine, so you get the experience, and then, decide whatever you can do after that. And 3 times, people have taken me up on that, and they did it, and they were super grateful. Now, there's also been a few times where they didn't know what they were using, and this is where sometimes lousy coaching comes into play, where one particular girl, she actually even went to my posing classes. She looked really good, but I wouldn't say, oh, she's a drug user, and she discovered she was using something. She admitted to it, but she didn't think it was illegal at the time, and she was crushed. So things like that happen through my experience. One of the wildest stories that I can share with you is that I had someone pass the polygraph, and I know this guy's history, or at least I assumed it. I was like, oh, wow, I thought he competed in the NPC, and maybe he was, not clean, but again, I shouldn't judge. And he actually failed the urine test. So what was really strange about that one is that once we told him that unfortunately you're going to be banned for 7 years because such and such was detected in your urine test, you can't compete. He didn't even respond or fight back or question it. So that basically told me that, yeah, he did pass the polygraph. He had like a flat line, chart, which I was told. And you can't really, unless you want to test him again, but he passed, but the urine test caught him. So it does work, I mean, I'm sure in the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of OCB shows, people have squeaked by. But you know what? They're dicks, bitches, whatever you want to call them. And unfortunately, it can happen, but you can't worry about it because, again, karma will come around. They set those waves out, and they're going to come back crashing on them. So don't sweat that at all if that ever comes up. So that really wraps up my little podcast talking about steroids. It's a decision, personal decision, and if you want to use, have at it. I think if you are under a doctor's guidance, that's even better because they can monitor your blood work and your health and your fitness, as long as you're comfortable with doing that, being public about it with a physician. But just be careful. Again, it's a personal thought deciding factor. But if someone new were to ask me and they're only a couple years into weight training, I would say, you know what? Why do you want to do this? Do you want to compete? You just want to get bigger? Let's exhaust all the tools first, as long as we know that you are training hard, you are treating your body well, and see how far you can go before you make that decision. And then after 5 or 8 years of grinding away, and you do want to use, you know what? You can do whatever you want to do. But the way that I look at it, if you want to be a competitor, there's a path to success in most of these organizations, as far as drug-tested organizations. You can become a pro. You can get the accolades. You can get the exposure. Because I think going through the NPC and the IFBB, the path is much longer. There's much more politics. And it's just not using a little bit of steroids going to get you there. You got to be careful, because that rabbit hole is something that you may not ever come out. You may regret it after 5 or 10 years after your competition, journey through the NPC That's my soapbox. Again, my opinion, nothing scientific, just what I think. So if I upset anyone, I'm sorry. So again, it's your decision. I support if clients want to work with me. I just usually don't get involved too much learning what their cycle is or anything. I'll ask a few questions because, again, I want to help people in the most healthiest way when it comes to diet and exercise. So, again, I'm going to wrap this one up for sure this time. If you guys have any other questions or requests as far as podcasts go, please email me at fitfranco@verizon.net. Hit me up with any questions. If you're interested in coaching, teamfrancobodybuilding.com is my website. You'll find that on Instagram, Facebook, and all that good stuff. I'll talk to you soon, guys. Take care.